Hey folks, if you're just joining us, allow me to fill you in on the story that started back at April Fool's this year. Those are the stories where we can be a little bit more loose with the story and you don't have to take it seriously. Concerning the idea of Goku having had a sister. Now this month, we're focusing on two stories. This one, and Coola's Path to Returning Good, which came out last Friday and we'll be going through September. But now though, let's remind you of what's been happening with the likes of Goku's sister, Jocha. In short, this timeline, Bardock and Gine had a third child, with a daughter in between Raditz and Kakarot, as of course named Jocha, named after Jocha, one of the rarest legumes on the planet Earth. She had incredible power, even more so than Kakarot's potential at birth, even though nobody really knew it at the time. But Raditz, who was a jealous little sod as we all know, tipped off the Saiyan elites and condemned her to a life of training and combat with them, all thanks to her strength, being a gift and a curse. But Raditz did get karmic justice in the end. But for 20 years, Jocha worked with Vegeta and Nappa until one day, she went on a mission that the other two had skipped out on and stumbled upon a transmission which led her to Kakarot on Earth. Her missing brother had been found around about the time of the 23rd Budokai. From there, she reconnected with her younger brother and made friends with the Dragon Team, in particular with Tenshinhan, thanks to his incredible concentration and fighting prowess, despite not being a Saiyan. However, she was constantly reminding herself that Vegeta may come for her one day, and sure enough, he did. With paranoia as a forethought, she and Kakarot trained, and I mean really trained, as well as the rest of the Dragon Team, inspired by the likes of Jocha, and they met the two Saiyans in the middle, keeping them away from Earth and the identification of the Dragon Balls. So that means Frieza doesn't find out about them. Thanks to her anticipation, her power level of 10,000 in the original plot point when we started had increased to the point where the prince was clearly no longer in control. Ultimately, Nappa switched sides and sided with Jocha, leaving Vegeta out in the cold and having to run off to lick his wounds. But also realizing that indeed, he could use this opportunity to free himself from Frieza's influence. A blessed opportunity. Sadly though, Jocha found out the truth about her secondment to the Saiyan elites, and henceforth promised to be a better sibling to Kakarot than Raditz was to her from there on out. Her calling him Goku as per his request when they first met, and now we resume. Months had passed since the altercation with Vegeta and Nappa on that forgettable planetoid, and Jocha still kept thinking about it. In her mind, she was still reliving the revelation that Raditz had been the one to send her to the Saiyan gulag effectively, to become some sort of unstoppable killing machine, which was very much against her original nature. Fortunately, she had enough of a soul to not be one of those on the front lines killing people incessantly, and her latent potential had been enough to keep the higher-ups from forcing her to do that, to be an unstoppable killing machine. She was strong enough to be feared. She would have gotten plenty of comments like, "If you weren't so strong, I'd smack some sense into you," or "You're lucky Bardock blessed you with such power." I mean, they were right, she was lucky, but in a way, she was also unlucky. And that didn't stop 2 decades worth of trauma being inflicted upon her. So could you really consider that luck? Now though, things had changed. Thanks to her reunion with Goku, she now had something to live for, and had become more powerful than ever, simply by being free and chill, much more productive and satisfying. Granted, the time in the Room of Spirit and Time had been very taxing, but at least she had a friendly face to talk to after a long day of training, and it was for her own benefit instead of someone else's. She had it better now. But what now? It had occurred to her. What was she going to do now? Train some more? Gain a new power? Well, okay, that didn't sound too bad. After all, there was something about what Goku said that resonated with her for days on end afterwards, and was part of the original catalyst to train for Vegeta, believing that out there, in the big wilderness of space, somebody will be stronger than you, and you have to be prepared and ready to face them should they come your way, and overcome them. She liked that idea. But something else would be a neat distraction from the typical Saiyan thing of, well, fighting. And what didn't help was that she had to play babysitter to a very big, bald baby, who thankfully saw sense on that day. Nappa, now actually meeting her with sweats and a pair of sunglasses, sat down next to Jocha, him having not been around for a while.
So, still thinking about that day, buddy?
Jocha turned to him. Why did you abandon Vegeta, Nappa? And don't say it was because I was stronger than him. I've heard that before. Nappa thought about it.
Well, I told you. I finally understood that Vegeta's way of doing things kinda sucked. Both of us are treated like garbage. Only you got it worse for being, well, you know.
He made a motion to denote a woman, and Jocha rolled her eyes. Really? You gotta find a more articulate way of describing that in the future, Nappa. I don't think people around here would accept that, but alright. Nappa looked awkwardly away and felt a bit stupid, but continued.
Sorry, but it's true though. And for me, I finally got it. I wasn't gonna put up with that anymore. I gave him the benefit of the doubt for so long when he was a kid, for being so loud and desperate. He was scared, a scared little brat who didn't know any better. I knew better at the time, so I thought I could change him. But by now, at his age, that kind of excuse ain't gonna fly no more.
Jocha eyed up Nappa's clubber. You still wanting to be a pro wrestler? Nappa nodded.
Well, I gotta do something around here. And I kinda look like one of those guys already, so I fit in real good. No one will bat an eyelid if I knock some sense into someone in a ring. I can make some money out of it.
Don't go too hard on those weaklings, pal, Jocha said with a smirk. They break more easily than we do.
I know. And I can be famous, whilst also doing something I kinda like. And I know. Have you figured out something yet?
Jocha looked away. No, not yet. I guess just, keep training and waiting for the next fight. She leant on her hands and looked mighty bored.
That sounds really dull, buddy, not gonna lie.
It's what the guys did in the past. Between big battles with enemies like King Piccolo and, well, Vegeta, they kinda just existed. She looked up to the sky. I had a thought. Maybe. With barely a look toward Nappa, she flew up to the lookout. Nappa shrugged.
Well, I hope she figures something out. She's no fun when she's got nothing to do.
So with that, Nappa went back off to his training ground, led by a certain Mr. Satan, who was getting very anxious about this new student of his. Within minutes, Jocha had arrived at Kami's lookout and was greeted by the Guardian, very happy to see the Saiyan who had protected Earth from those two brutes.
What troubles you, my child? You seem to be rather aimless.
Jocha nodded. Yeah, I am, Kami. I've got nothing to fight for. We Saiyans are very single-minded, even the more level-headed ones. Kami sighed.
I see. So, you are spoiling for a fight, but yet not spoiling for one. Perhaps King Kai might know the answer.
Jocha looked up. King Kai? You mean that guy that helped earlier? Well, what can he do?
He's more than the galaxy's security guard, Jocha. He might be able to grant you more strength and potential should you require it.
Kami then closed his eyes and concentrated. Jocha wasn't privy to the conversation and had to wait for Kami to resume eye contact with her. And after a few minutes, he actually did respond to her, with a smile.
Good news. He is permitting you passage to his planet. It's a great honor. The last soul from Earth who had that honor was from about 10,000 years ago. Not even I was aware of it, and I am rather old.
He did kind of smirk, but Jocha's eyes lit up. Cool! Can I bring people along with me? Kami looked apprehensive, though.
About that. I'm afraid you won't be able to take the whole party. He is permitting only one companion. I'm afraid that teaching the entire contingent of our team is out of the question. You see, he doesn't get many people visiting, so I'm afraid he would feel rather crowded.
Jocha sighed and nodded. Okay, then I guess it'll just be me and Goku again. Shame. Kinda wanted to treat everyone.
I understand, but... And Kami had a little twinkle in his eyes. That doesn't mean you can't teach everyone else after you return. It's important to share with your team the fruits of your labors should you want them to prosper.
Jocha nodded. Oh, I got it. Okay, I'll go get Goku and then we'll be right back. Kami smiled and bade Jocha goodbye. Sure enough, Goku and Jocha did venture to King Kai's planet, with a great deal of resistance from Chi-Chi, who didn't want Gohan to be without a father for a long time. But she relented when Jocha pitched the idea of Nappa babysitting. Chi-Chi didn't like that brutish oaf being around and thought maybe single parenting for a little while would be sufficient. Upon their arrival on the planet, which in this point, as you could tell, took no time at all since both of them could fly over Snake Way, the deity was very intrigued to see two Saiyans who were far more noble than the convention would actually dictate. But having said that, he had been watching the battle on the asteroid between them and Vegeta and Nappa, and understood that their intentions were true. They were on the level in terms of their desires. They weren't trying to get this power for greed or their own benefit. They wanted to help people. They were good, and had managed to turn the Prince of all Saiyans on his tail and made him run into the darkness of the galaxy. And speaking of, do you know where Vegeta is now, King Kai? Said Goku with a degree of seriousness in his voice. King Kai's antenna twitched a little to check.
Well, not really. But he hasn't gone back to Freezer if that's what you were wondering. Looks like he took your offer seriously.
He looked to Jocha. King Kai forewent the usual tasks required to get his training, you know, the whole joke, catching Bubbles and then hitting Gregory, since he knew that Gregory and Bubbles wouldn't be able to stand a chance against them at this point. It would have been pointless. And that Jocha also might bonk him on the head if he pulled the joke card. Besides, they'd already earned it. Since their power was greater than his by some margin, the training wasn't as arduous as in the original story when Goku arrived on King Kai's planet. Both he and Jocha, after their time in the Room of Spirit and Time, were now once again used to the heavier gravity levels of King Kai's planet. And besides, 10 times gravity, that was the same as planet Vegeta, so for Jocha, it was nothing, and Goku had acclimatized. As a result, they could spend more time perfecting the techniques that the deity had to hand, that being of course the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb. The Kaioken was easy enough, and Jocha found it to be a remarkable power, and it kind of reminded her about one of those old legends that Bardock liked to talk about. Something about the legendary Super Saiyan of legend. And then that was reinforced when the elites kept going on about it in the mess hall, each claiming to be the next legendary Super Saiyan of legend. Just you wait for realsies, I will get it one day, promise, I cross my heart. They never did. Good. None of them deserved it. They were a legendary pain in the bum. Even Vegeta got in on the act, but this Kaioken technique was an amazing facsimile. Granted, it was incredibly taxing on the body, but thanks to their already substantial training, they were able to handle Kaioken up to a decent point, ×3, with little difficulty, which stunned the likes of King Kai. He was very grateful for these two being good guys, and since there was no perilous enemy coming their way, they could take a little more time and spend a little longer on the planet, perfecting the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb techniques. Now this is where Goku starts to excel here. Sure, Jocha was stronger than him, but Goku had the measure of her when it came to perfecting techniques that he had learned. Kaioken, that was pretty even, but the Spirit Bomb? Nah, Goku had that down much faster than Jocha. And the best that Jocha could do was create some sort of mini energy boost for herself, which was a little bit more sustainable and less aggressive than Kaioken, but it wasn't as effective as Goku's more ranged attack when using the Genki Dama or the Spirit Bomb, which was the traditional means of using said power. Jocha had what you might consider the Super Android 13 movie version, the Spirit Saiyan type of thing. She couldn't really contain all that outside energy in one hand. She had to use her whole body to contain it for one singular attack. In the end, she had to admit that she actually preferred Kaioken. It felt more at home to her. Goku offered to teach her more about the Spirit Bomb, but she was frustrated. I gotta admit defeat on this one, brother. That one's your wheelhouse. She ruffled his hair, not afraid to admit a deficiency. After a whole year on the planet, a few months more than the original telling, both Jocha and Goku came out of the training much stronger than before, and with two incredible techniques.
Consider this a thank you for preventing a major catastrophe. That Vegeta was the cause of many deaths around the galaxy in the name of Lord Frieza. I know that you were part of his brigade, Jocha, but you've atoned yourself, unlike him. I'll keep an eye on that prince in case he decides to pull any fast ones on us. And besides, it'll give me something to do. You take care. And use this power wisely, okay?
Both Goku and Jocha nodded and headed back to the Otherworld check-in station for a safe passage back to Earth. Yama wasn't impressed with the idea of two mortals who hadn't died yet getting access to King Kai like this. But he had his orders, so he had to hold his tongue on this one. But to be fair, they had prevented further deaths at the hands of Vegeta from darkening his dossier, so I mean, that was something. When they got back, Goku was keen to take it easy and relax for a little bit before training again, but Jocha wasn't so eager to rest. Not yet, brother. We can't just sit on these powers and not share them with our friends. What happens if we fall to some power out there? Earth would be defenseless. We have to share what we've learned now. Goku was getting a little concerned. It's okay, Jocha, chill. I understand you want to be helpful and prove that you're a good person, a good big sis. But you're not a Saiyan elite anymore. You're an Earthling, like us. And the best thing you can do right now, to be as effective as you can be, is just to stop for a second. Just for a little while. Jocha looked pensive. I know. I like to fight and train and stuff, but even I need a break. We've been training for a whole year. I need at least a short while to recover before I can train again. Besides, Chi-Chi probably wants me to help out a little before she lets me go do stuff like this again. So please, sis, just take the time and rest. Jocha was still unwilling to do this, and this is when it hit her. Sure, she hated being a Saiyan elite, but that was the only way of living that she had lived for nearly all her life. It was impossible to just stop. Nappa had found something to do, but even that had some modicum of Saiyan eliteness about it. Fighting her, though, she was trying to resist it, and yet it was still a part of her very core. She had to be ready for the next mission, whatever it was. I'm sorry, Goku. I can't do that. But you go off and be with Chi-Chi, okay? I'll see you around. Without a chance to respond, Jocha flew off, leaving Goku feeling very worried and yet relieved of not having to train some more. But don't worry, he'll get that urge again very soon, which was something he thought he would never think. When Jocha came to a stop, she was outside the residence of a certain Triclops and mini-vampire. She knocked on the door, and out from that came Tenshinhan and Chaozu.
Oh, Jocha. I thought it was your energy I sensed. What can I do for you?
Tenshinhan, let's train. I've got something cool to show you. You too, Chaozu. Both the Dragon Team fighters were confused, but also intrigued.
Why us? Said Tenshinhan.
Because you're my friend. Then she laughed, and I got a feeling that if you nail these techniques, it might give you what you want.
Tenshinhan, who had always wanted to surpass Goku from way back when, took to this very well and appreciated this. Sounds good. I'm in. They shook hands, and Jocha entered the domicile, much to the chagrin of a certain blonde bombshell who was stalking the Triclops.
What's your deal, you hussy? She muttered to herself. There's no way, no how you get in the way of my Tien.
She rubbed the end of her armament in a cold, calculating manner. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.